The Cretaceous Past This was an ordinary day in the late Cretaceous, 65 million years ago. It is impossible to know exactly which day it was, but it truly was ordinary, and Earth passed through it in peace.
In that age, the continents had shapes and positions very different from those of today. Dinosaurs lived mainly on two great landmasses. One was ancient Gondwana, once the only whole continent on Earth, hundreds of millions of years earlier. By then it had split and shrunk greatly, though it was still as large as present-day Africa and South America combined. The other was Laurasia, a continent that had broken away from Gondwana and would later form North America.
On this day, across every continent, every living creature hurried about for survival. In that ignorant world, they did not know where they had come from and did not care where they were going. When the Cretaceous sun rose to the zenith and the broad leaves of the cycads cast their smallest shadows on the ground, they cared only about where to find today's lunch.
A Tyrannosaurus rex had found its lunch. It was in the middle of ancient Gondwana, in a sunlit clearing inside a tall cycad forest. Its meal was a fat lizard it had just caught. With its two great claws, it tore the desperately twisting lizard in half, tossed the tail half into its huge mouth, and chewed with relish. At that moment, it was very satisfied with the world and with its life.
About 1 meter from the Tyrannosaurus's left foot stood a small town of ants. Most of the town was underground, and more than 1,000 ants lived there. The dry season had lasted a long time that year. Life was growing harder, and they had already gone hungry for 2 days.
After finishing its meal, the Tyrannosaurus stepped back twice and lay down contentedly in the shade for a nap. Its fall caused a violent earthquake in the little town. The ants who rushed to the surface saw the dinosaur's body like a distant mountain range. Soon another earthquake came. The mountain rolled back and forth over the earth. The Tyrannosaurus had thrust one giant claw into its mouth and was scraping hard between its huge teeth. The ants quickly understood why it could not sleep. Meat was stuck between its teeth, and it was miserable.
The mayor of the ant town suddenly had an idea. It climbed up a blade of grass and sent a stream of scent language down to the colony. Wherever the scent reached, the ants understood the mayor's meaning, and they released their own scents to carry the message farther. Antennae waved through the colony, and a wave of excitement spread among them. Then, led by the mayor, the colony marched toward the Tyrannosaurus, forming several black streams across the ground.
10 minutes later, the ants followed the mayor and began climbing the dinosaur's giant claw. The Tyrannosaurus saw the colony on its forearm and raised the other arm to sweep them away. Its huge palm covered the noon sun like a dark cloud, and the forearm plane beneath the ants instantly fell into shadow. Terrified, the ants looked up at the giant palm and waved their antennae frantically. The mayor raised a foreleg and pointed at the dinosaur's mouth. The other ants imitated the mayor, all pointing together at the dinosaur's mouth. The Tyrannosaurus froze for several seconds, as if it had understood. It thought for a moment and lowered the raised claw. On the forearm plane, the clouds parted and sunlight returned.
The Tyrannosaurus opened its huge mouth and laid one finger from its claw against its giant teeth, making a bridge between the forearm plane and the teeth. The ants hesitated. The mayor walked onto the finger first, and the colony followed.
A group of ants soon reached the end of the finger. Standing on the smooth, conical fingertip, they looked into the dinosaur's mouth with awe. It was as if they faced a world in a thunderstorm's dark night. A wet, bloody gale blew into their faces, and from the endless darkness came a rolling thunder. When their eyes adjusted to the dark, they dimly saw an even darker region far away. its boundary constantly changing shape. Only after a long while did the ants realize that this was the dinosaur's throat, and that the rolling thunder came from there, from deep in the great black hole where the Tyrannosaurus's enormous stomach rumbled.
The ants drew back their gaze in fear, climbed from the fingertip onto the dinosaur's giant teeth, and then descended the white, smooth cliffs of enamel. In the wide gaps between the teeth, they began using their powerful jaws to tear at the pink lizard meat lodged there. By then, the Tyrannosaurus had placed its finger against the upper row of teeth, and later ants continuously climbed up and entered the upper gaps to eat, making the scene above look like a mirror image of the one below. In more than 10 gaps between the dinosaur's teeth, over 1,000 ants were busy. Soon, the scraps of meat were picked clean.
The discomfort between the Tyrannosaurus's teeth vanished. Dinosaurs had not evolved far enough to say thank you, so it merely exhaled in pleasure. A sudden hurricane swept between the two rows of giant teeth and blew all the ants out. The colony drifted down through the air like black dust. Because their bodies were so light, they landed unharmed a little more than a meter from the Tyrannosaurus's head. The well-fed ants returned contentedly toward the entrance of their town, while the Tyrannosaurus, relieved of the irritation between its teeth, rolled back into the cool shade and slept in comfort.
Earth turned quietly. The sun slid silently westward. The shadows of the cycads lengthened without sound. Butterflies and tiny flying insects moved through the forest, and in the distance, the waves of an ancient ocean beat against the shore of Gondwana.
No one knew that, in this peaceful moment, the history of Earth had been twisted in another direction. 1. The information age time flew. 50,000 years passed.
The interdependence between dinosaurs and ants continued. Together, the two species created Cretaceous civilization, passing through the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, the Age of Steam, the Electrical Age, and the Atomic Age. Now they had entered the Information Age.
Dinosaurs built immense cities across the continents. In those cities stood buildings more than 10,000 meters high. From their roofs, looking down was like seeing the world from an airplane. The clouds seemed to cling to the ground. These towers rose above seas of cloud, and when the clouds below were thick, the dinosaurs on the upper floors, always under clear blue sky, would call the doorman on the ground floor to ask whether it was raining down there, so they could decide whether to bring umbrellas when they left work. Their umbrellas were enormous, too, like circus tents to us. Each of their cars was as large as one of our buildings, and the ground shook as they drove.
Dinosaur airplanes were as large as our great ships. In flight they rolled across the sky like thunder and cast huge shadows on the ground. Dinosaurs also ventured into space. Many of their satellites and spacecraft moved in geosynchronous orbit, and these craft were likewise colossal. Their shapes could be seen from the ground. The dinosaur world was connected by a vast and complex computer network. Each key on their keyboards was as large as one of our computer screens, and each monitor was as wide as one of our walls.
At the same time, the ant world had also entered an advanced information age. Its sources of power were completely different from those of the dinosaurs. Ants did not use oil or coal, but harvested wind and solar energy. In ant cities, there were many wind turbines, shaped and sized like the paper pinwheels our children play with. The surfaces of the city buildings were covered with a glossy black material, solar cells. Another important ant technology was bioengineered power muscle. These muscles looked like thick cables. When injected with nutrient fluid, they could contract and extend at many frequencies to produce power. Ant cars and aircraft used power muscles as engines.
Ants had computers too. They were round granules the size of rice grains. Unlike dinosaur computers, they had no integrated circuits. All computation was completed by complex organic chemical reactions. Ant computers had no screens. They output information as chemical odors, and only ants could distinguish these extremely complex and delicate scents. Ant senses translated the scents into data, language, and images. These granular chemical computers were also linked into vast networks, but not by optical fiber or radio waves. They communicated through chemical odors, exchanging information in scent language. The structure of ant society was very different from the colonies we see today. It was more like human society.
Because embryos were produced by bioengineering, the role of queens in reproduction had become negligible. So queens no longer held the status or importance they have in ant society today.
A mutually dependent relationship had formed between the ant world and the dinosaur world. Clumsy-limbed dinosaurs relied on the ants' ability to perform delicate operations. In every factory of the dinosaur world, large numbers of ants worked, mainly manufacturing tiny parts that dinosaur workers could not make, and operating, maintaining, and repairing precision equipment and instruments. Another important field in which ants served dinosaur society was medicine. All dinosaur surgery was still performed by ant physicians who entered their enormous organs. The ants possessed many precise medical devices, including tiny laser scalpels and miniature submarines that could travel through dinosaur blood vessels and clear blockages.
The ant empire on Gondwana eventually unified the uncivilized ant tribes on every continent and established the Ant Federation, an ant world that covered the entire Earth.
In contrast to the ant world, the once unified dinosaur empire had split. Laurasia became independent and founded another huge dinosaur nation, the Republic of Laurasia. Later, through more than 1,000 years of expansion, the Gondwana Empire occupied Proto-India, Proto-Antarctica, and Proto-Australia, while the Republic of Laurasia expanded its territory into Proto-Asia and Proto-Europe. The Gondwana Empire was made up mainly of tyrannosaurs, while the dominant species in the Republic of Laurasia was the tyrannosaurid. In the long history of territorial expansion, the two sides repeatedly fought wars. But in the last 200 years, with the arrival of the nuclear age, war had stopped.
This was entirely the result of nuclear deterrence. Both great powers had stockpiled large numbers of thermonuclear weapons. Once war broke out, those bombs would turn Earth into a lifeless radioactive furnace. It was the fear of mutual destruction that maintained the terrifying peace of Cretaceous Earth on the point of a needle. As time passed, dinosaur society expanded rapidly across Earth. Their numbers increased swiftly. The continents grew crowded, and the two great threats of environmental pollution and nuclear war became increasingly serious. Cracks appeared again between the ant world and the dinosaur world, and an ominous shadow settled over Cretaceous civilization.
At the just concluded annual Dinosaur Ant Summit, the ant world demanded that the dinosaur world take decisive measures, destroy all nuclear weapons, protect the environment, and limit population growth. After these demands were rejected, every ant in the Cretaceous world went on strike.
2. The Ant Strike. In the capital of the Gondwana Empire, inside a vast blue hall of the cloud-piercing palace, Emperor Dadas lay on a large sofa, covering his left eye with one great claw and groaning in pain from time to time. Several dinosaurs stood around him. Babe, the Minister of State; Marshal Luologa, the Minister of Defense;
Dr. Ninkan, the Minister of Science, and Dr. Vivek, the Minister of Medicine.
Dr. Vivek bent forward, looked at the Emperor, and said, "Your Majesty, your left eye is already inflamed and urgently needs surgery. But now no antophthalmic surgeons can be found. We can only maintain it with antibiotics. If this continues, that eye is in danger of going blind."
Damn it!
The Emperor said through clenched teeth, then asked the doctor, "Are there no ant doctors in any hospital in the country?" Vivek nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty. Large numbers of patients who need surgery cannot be treated, and this has already caused a certain degree of social panic."
I suspect the greater panic does not come from that.
As he spoke, the Emperor turned to the Minister of State. Babat bowed slightly and said,
Of course, Your Majesty. At present, 2/3 of the country's factories have shut down, and several cities have lost power. Conditions in the Republic of Laurasia are not much better than ours.
Have the machines and production lines that dinosaurs can operate also stopped?
Yes, Your Majesty. In manufacturing, such as automobile production, if the fine small components cannot be made, the large components that dinosaurs can produce cannot be assembled into usable products. So those lines have stopped too. In other industries, such as chemical production and power generation, the ant strike did not matter much at first. But as equipment failures increased and repairs could not keep up, more and more factories became paralyzed.
The Emperor flew into a rage. Idiots! As soon as the Dinosaur Ant Summit ended, I ordered you to begin emergency training for dinosaur industrial workers across the country, so they could gradually take over the delicate operations formerly performed by ants.
Your Majesty, that is almost impossible.
Nothing is impossible for the great Gondwana Empire. In the empire's long history, Gondwana dinosaurs have survived crises far greater than this. Bloody battles against overwhelming enemies, forest fires that covered entire continents, and lands flooded with lava after continental plates shifted.
But, Your Majesty, this time is different. What is different? With diligent study and hard practice, dinosaurs can also have skillful hands. Our world will not yield to the blackmail of those little insects. I will show Your Majesty how difficult this truly is.
As the Minister of State spoke, he opened his great claw and placed 2 red electrical wires on the sofa. Your Majesty, could you try the most basic operation in repairing machinery? Connect these 2 wires.
Each finger on Emperor Dodas's great claw was 1/2 meter long and thicker than a teacup. The 2 wires, each 3 millimeters in diameter, looked to him thinner than hairs look to us. With great effort, he crouched there, bringing both eyes close to the sofa as he tried to pick up the wires. His thick conical nails were as smooth as little artillery shells, and every wire he managed to pinch slipped away. Stripping the insulation and making a connection was out of the question. The Emperor sighed and swept the wires to the floor with an impatient wave of his claw.
Even if Your Majesty eventually mastered the fine skill of connecting wires, you still could not do repair work. Our thick fingers cannot reach inside the precision machines that only ants can crawl into. Alas, Science Minister Ninkan let out a long sigh and said with feeling,
800 years ago, the late Emperor already saw the danger created by the dinosaur world's dependence on ant-fine operations skills, and he made enormous efforts to research new technologies and equipment to free us from that dependence. But, forgive my bluntness, during these 2 centuries, including Your Majesty's reign, those efforts have almost stopped. We have lain comfortably in the warm bed of ant service and forgotten danger in times of peace.
I have not lain in anyone's warm bed.
The Emperor raised both great claws and said angrily,
In fact, the danger the late Emperor saw has appeared countless times in my nightmares.
He pressed one thick finger against Ninkan's chest. But you must understand, the late Emperor's effort to escape dependence on ant skills stopped because it failed. The same thing happened in the Republic of Laurasia. That is true, Your Majesty.
The Minister of State nodded and pointed at the wires on the floor as he spoke to Ninkan.
Doctor, you cannot possibly be unaware that for dinosaurs to connect wires smoothly, those two wires would have to be 10 to 15 centimeters thick. Even at that size, we cannot imagine a mobile phone with wires as thick as saplings coiled inside it, or a computer built the same way. Similarly, for dinosaurs to operate and maintain them, half of all machines and equipment would have to be made 100 or even several hundred times larger than they are now. The corresponding consumption of resources and energy would be hundreds of times greater, and the economy of the dinosaur world could never bear it.
The science minister nodded, admitting the point.
Yes. Even worse, some equipment components cannot be enlarged at all. Optical and electromagnetic communication devices are examples. The wavelengths of electromagnetic waves, including light waves, determine that the components which modulate and process them must be tiny. Without tiny components, how could there be computers and networks? The same applies to research and production in molecular biology and genetic engineering.
The Minister of Medicine said,
Our medicine cannot do without ants either. Without them, dinosaur surgery is unimaginable.
The science minister summarized.
The Dinosaur-Ant Alliance is a choice made by nature in evolution. Its significance is extremely profound. Without this alliance, civilization on Earth could never have appeared. We absolutely cannot tolerate the ants destroying it.
Then what do we do now? The Emperor spread both claws and looked at everyone. Marshal Lologa, the Minister of Defense, who had been silent until now, spoke. Your Majesty, the Ant Federation certainly has its advantages, but we also have our own strength. Cities in the ant world are smaller than our children's building blocks. We could wash them away with a stream of urine. The Empire should use that strength.
The Emperor nodded and said to the Marshal, Very well. Order the General Staff to draft an operation plan. Destroy several ant cities and give them a warning.
Marshal.
The Minister of State said, holding Luologa back just as he was about to leave.
The key is to coordinate with Laurasia.
Yes, the Emperor nodded. We must act at the same time as they do, to prevent Dodomi from playing the good dinosaur and pulling the Ant Federation over to Laurasia's side. 3. The Last War.
After 3 of our cities were destroyed, the Ant Federation has temporarily ended the strike and resumed work in the dinosaur world in order to avoid greater losses. The facts are now clear. Either ants destroy dinosaurs, or all civilization on Earth is destroyed together.
Kakika, the Supreme Executive of the Ant Federation, said this from the parliamentary rostrum. I agree with the Supreme Executive. Senator Belubi waved her antennae from her seat and said,
If present trends continue, Earth's biosphere has only 2 possible fates. Either it will be completely poisoned by pollution from dinosaur-heavy industry, or it will be completely destroyed in a nuclear war between the 2 great dinosaur powers, Gondwana and Laurasia.
Their words aroused a strong response among the ant legislators. Yes, it is time for the final choice. Destroy the dinosaurs and save civilization. Act, act, Please, everyone, calm down. Dr. Joy, chief scientist of the Ant Federation, waved his antennae to quiet the uproar.
You must understand that the symbiosis between ants and dinosaurs has lasted for tens of thousands of years. The Dinosaur-Ant Alliance is the foundation of Earth civilization, and of course the foundation of ant civilization as well. If this alliance suddenly disappears, and one side of it, dinosaur civilization, is destroyed, can ant civilization truly survive alone? Everyone knows that in the alliance, what dinosaurs receive from ants has always been clear and concrete, while what ants receive from dinosaurs includes, besides basic living materials, certain intangible things, their ideas and scientific knowledge. For ant civilization, the latter is obviously more important. Ants may become excellent engineers, but they can never become scientists.
Because the physiology of the ant brain determines that we can never possess the two things dinosaurs have: curiosity and imagination. Senator Belubi shook her head dismissively.
Curiosity and imagination? Tisk, tisk, Doctor. Do you think those are good things? It is exactly those two things that make dinosaurs neurotic animals, with unstable emotions, unpredictable tempers, and whole days wasted in wild daydreams.
But, Senator, precisely that instability and wild thinking make inspiration and creation possible. They make possible theoretical research into the deepest laws of the universe, and that research is the foundation of technological progress. Enough. Enough. Kachika impatiently cut off Dr. Joy.
Now is not the time for this pointless academic discussion, Doctor. The ant world faces only one question: destroy the dinosaurs, or be destroyed together with them? Joya had no answer. Kachika turned toward Ruoli and nodded. Marshal Ruoli walked up to the rostrum.
I want everyone to see a small object. It is also one of the minor technical inventions we have made without relying on dinosaur teachers. At the marshal's signal, 2 ants carried up 2 small, thin white strips, like little scraps of paper. Ruoli introduced them.
This is the newest model of the ant's most traditional weapon, the thunder grain. These sheet-shaped thunder grains were developed by the Federation's military engineers specifically for this final war.
He flicked an antenna, and 4 more ants carried up 2 short sections of wire, the kind most commonly found inside dinosaur machines. One was red and the other green. They placed the 2 wire sections on a stand, then wrapped the 2 white strips around the middle of the wires. The strips clung tightly, like 2 turns of white tape. Then something marvelous happened. The 2 white bands suddenly began to change color, each becoming the color of the wire it wrapped, one red and one green. Soon they fused visually with the wires and could not be distinguished at all. Kachika said,
"This is the Federation's newest weapon, the color-changing thunder grain. Once installed, dinosaurs will never find them."
About 2 minutes later, the thunder grains exploded. After 2 crisp snaps, both wire sections were cleanly cut.
When the time comes, the Federation will dispatch an army of 100 million ants. Some are ants currently working in the dinosaur world, while others are infiltrating it now. This army will install 200 million color-changing thunder grains on wires inside dinosaur machines. We call this operation Wire Cut.
Wow, what a magnificent plan!
Senator Belubi exclaimed, drawing a sincere murmur of agreement from the legislators.
Another simultaneous operation is equally magnificent. The Federation will dispatch another army of 20 million ants to infiltrate the heads of 5 million dinosaurs and install thunder grains on the main blood vessels of their brains. These 5 million dinosaurs are the elite among the billions on Earth. They include national leaders, scientists, technicians and operators in key positions, and others. Once they are killed, the entire dinosaur world will be like a body that has lost its brain. Therefore, we call this operation brain cut.
The most brilliant part of the plan is the simultaneity of the strike against the dinosaur world.
Kakika continued.
The 200 million thunder grains planted inside dinosaur machines and the 5 million thunder grains placed in dinosaur brains will explode at the same instant. The error will not exceed 1 second. This will prevent any part of the dinosaur world from receiving rescue or replacement from any other part. The whole dinosaur society will sink swiftly like a ship in the middle of the ocean, whose bottom has been pulled out. Then we will be the true rulers of Earth.
Honorable Executive Kachika, may we know the exact time of that great moment?
Belubi asked, struggling to contain her excitement. All thunder grains will be set to detonate at midnight 1 month from now. The ants burst into cheers.
Dr. Joy waved his antennae desperately, trying to quiet the ants, but the cheering went on and on. Only after he shouted did everyone fall silent and turn their eyes toward him.
Enough! Have you all gone mad?
Joy shouted. The dinosaur world is an extremely complex supergiant system. If that system collapses everywhere in a single instant, it will produce consequences we cannot predict.
Doctor, besides the destruction of the dinosaur world and the Ant Federation's final victory on Earth, can you tell us what other consequences there could be?
Kachika asked. I said they cannot be predicted.
There it is again, Bookworm Joy. We are tired of that line of yours.
Belubi said, and the other legislators also expressed annoyance that the chief scientist had spoiled their excitement. Ruoli walked over and patted Joy with a foreleg. The marshal was a calm ant, and one of the few who had not joined the cheering.
Doctor, I understand your worries. In fact, we have considered them too. I suppose the most likely one is that dinosaur nuclear weapons might go out of control. But do not worry. Although the nuclear weapon systems of both dinosaur powers are all controlled by dinosaurs, and the small amount of routine maintenance performed by ants is carried out under strict dinosaur surveillance, it is still not difficult for ant special forces to enter their interiors. We will install twice as many thunder grains in the nuclear weapon systems as in other systems. After that moment, the nuclear systems will be paralyzed just like everything else, and no great disaster will occur.
Joy sighed. Marshal, the matter is far more complicated than you imagine. The key question is this: do we truly understand the dinosaur world? The question startled all the ants. Kachika looked at Joy and said,
Doctor, ants are everywhere in the dinosaur world and have been for tens of thousands of years. How can you ask such a foolish question?
Joy slowly shook his antennae. Ants and dinosaurs are, after all, two vastly different species living in two completely different worlds. My intuition tells me there must be some enormous secrets in the dinosaur world that ants know nothing about. If you cannot give us anything specific, then you have said nothing.
Belubi said dismissively. Joye said,
For that reason, I request the creation of an information gathering system. The concrete plan is this. Whenever you place a thunder grain in a dinosaur's brain, also install a listening device in its cochlea. I will lead a department to monitor and analyze the information these devices send back, in hopes of discovering as soon as possible things we did not know before.
4 thunder grains.
The communications building was the center of Boulder City's information network, responsible for information processing and exchange between the capital and the entire country. The Gondwana Empire had more than 100 such network centers, forming the backbone of its enormous information network.
An ant squad had already entered a server inside the information network center. The squad consisted of more than 100 ants. 5 hours earlier, They had infiltrated the communications building along a water pipe, then entered the server room through a tiny crack in the floor, and finally reached the interior of this server through a ventilation opening. In the dinosaurs' huge buildings and machines, ants could go anywhere. Hearing dinosaurs approach, the ants hurried to hide beneath a motherboard larger than a football field in one of their own cities. They heard the cabinet door open. Through small holes in the motherboard, they saw a magnifying glass cover the whole sky, and inside the warped glass appeared one enormous eye of a dinosaur engineer.
The ants were terrified then, but in the end, the dinosaur did not find them. The dinosaur engineer did not discover the dozens of thunder grains the ants had just planted. The tiny sheets had completely blended with the colors of the wires they stuck to and could not be distinguished. Sheet thunder grains had been attached to more than a dozen wires of different colors and thicknesses. Several more were attached to the circuit board. These thunder grains had a more advanced color-changing function, able to display different colors in different positions, exactly matching the board beneath them. They were seamless, and even harder to detect than the ones on the wires.
This kind of thunder grain did not explode. When the set time arrived, it would release several drops of strong acid and dissolve the etched circuits on the board.
After the cabinet door closed, the world inside the server instantly entered night. Only one power indicator light hung in the air like a green moon. The hum of the cooling fan and the soft clicking of the hard drive only deepened the stillness of this world.
Soon, in every server of the Information Network Center, an ant squad completed the deployment of thunder grains. In the vast outer world, across every continent, more than 100 million ants were doing the same thing inside countless huge machines of the dinosaur world.
That night, Dados, emperor of the Gondwana dinosaur empire, had a nightmare. He dreamed that a dark mass of ants crawled into his body through his nostrils, then came out of his mouth in a long column. Each ant that emerged held a piece of something in its jaws, his own organs, bitten to pieces. After dropping the fragments, the ants crawled back into his nostrils, forming an endless circulating ring.
Emperor Dadas's dream was not entirely baseless. At that moment, 2 ants really were crawling into his nostrils. These 2 soldier ants had slipped into his bedroom during the day and hidden under his pillow, waiting for their chance. Amid the roaring winds of his breathing nostrils, they walked with experience through the tangled forest of nose hairs, keeping themselves suspended to avoid triggering a dinosaur sneeze. They soon passed through the nasal cavity and followed a route, long familiar from countless surgeries, to the back of the eyeball. The ants advanced along the translucent optic nerve toward the brain. Sometimes a thin membrane blocked the path. They bit a hole through it, a hole so tiny that the dinosaur could not feel it.
At last, the 2 ants reached the brain. The brain floated quietly in cerebrospinal fluid, like a mysterious, independent life form. The ants searched carefully and soon found the thick cerebral blood vessel, the main channel supplying blood to the brain. One ant turned on a tiny headlamp and quickly located the main vessel, while the other attached a yellow thunder grain to the transparent outer wall of the vessel. Then they withdrew from the brain and crawled down a different winding path through the damp darkness of the skull. Soon they reached the ear and arrived before the eardrum. A thread of light entered through the translucent membrane, and the tiny sounds of the outside world, magnified by the cochlea, roared against the eardrum.
The 2 ants
began installing a listening device beneath the eardrum.
Emperor Dadas's nightmare continued. In the dream, his organs had been completely hollowed out, and more ants crawled inside to use his body as an anthill. When he awoke in a cold sweat, the 2 ants had already completed their task. Silently they crawled out of his nostril, down from the bed, and withdrew from the bedroom across the floor.
Emperor Dadas turned over heavily and again sank into sleep, still troubled by nightmares. 5. Poseidon and Bright Moon.
At the headquarters of the Ant Federation, Executive Kachika and Marshal Ruoli, Commander-in-Chief of the Federation Army, were directing the enormous operation to destroy the dinosaur world. 2 large screens displayed the progress of Operation Wirecut and Operation Braincut.
Everything appears to be going smoothly,
Ruoli said to Kachika. At that moment, Joy, the chief scientist of the Federation, came in. Kachika greeted him.
Ah, Dr. Joy, I have not seen you for a week. Busy analyzing the intercepted information. From that grave look, it seems you really do have some shocking secret to tell us.
Joy nodded his antenna. Yes, I must speak with you 2 immediately. We are very busy. Please be brief.
I want you both to listen to a recording. It is a conversation between Dados and Dodomi that we intercepted yesterday during the summit between the Gondwana Empire and the Republic of Laurasia. Kachika said impatiently.
What secret could there be in that meeting? We all know the 2 countries' nuclear disarmament talks collapsed again. War between Gondwana and Laurasia is about to break out. That only proves our operation is correct. We must destroy the dinosaur world before their nuclear war begins.
Joy said,
You are referring to the news announcement. What I want you to hear are the details of their secret talks. In them, something we did not know before was revealed.
The recording began to play. Dodomi. Your Majesty Dadas, do you truly think the ants will submit so easily? It is almost certain that their return to work in the dinosaur world is only a delaying tactic. The Ant Federation must be planning a major conspiracy against the dinosaur world. Dadas. President Dodomi, do you think I am too stupid to see something so obvious? But compared with Laurasia's bright moon entering negative countdown, the threat from the ants, even your nuclear threat, has become insignificant. Dodomi. Yes, yes. Compared with the ant threat and the danger of nuclear war, Bright Moon and Poseidon are of course greater dangers to Earth civilization. So let us discuss that first. It is improper to blame us over Bright Moon. Poseidon entered negative countdown first.
Stop! Stop!
Kachika waved his antennae and said,
Doctor, I do not understand what they are talking about.
After pausing the recorder, Joy said, There are 2 important pieces of information in this conversation. What are Bright Moon and Poseidon? And what is negative countdown?
Doctor, the conversations of dinosaur high leaders are often full of strange code names. Why are you becoming suspicious over this? From their conversation, we can tell that these are 2 very dangerous things, things capable of threatening the entire world of Earth.
Logically, that is impossible. Doctor, anything capable of threatening the entire Earth must be a large facility. If such a facility existed, the Ant Federation could not fail to know about it.
Executive, I agree with you. No large facility on Earth could exist without ants knowing. But a simple, smaller facility might. It could operate normally without ant maintenance. For example, a single intercontinental missile could remain on standby,
and be ready to launch at any time without ant participation. Perhaps Bright Moon and Poseidon, or something like that.
If so, there is no need to worry. Such a small facility cannot threaten the whole Earth. As I just said, even the most powerful thermonuclear bomb would require tens of thousands of units to destroy the Earth.
Joy was silent for several seconds. Then he brought his head close to Kachika's. Their antennae crossed, and their eyes nearly collided. That is the crux of the problem, Executive. Are nuclear bombs truly the highest energy weapons currently on Earth? Doctor, that is common sense.
Joy drew back his head and nodded his antennae. Yes, common sense. That is the fatal flaw in ant thinking. Our thoughts are confined to common sense, while dinosaurs constantly stare into unknown new realms. Those are all pure scientific fields, with no relation to reality.
Then let me remind you of something related to reality. Do you remember the new sun that suddenly appeared in the night sky 3 years ago?
Of course, Kachika and Ruo Li remembered. That unprecedented event had left too deep an impression on them. It was a cold winter night. Suddenly, a new sun appeared directly above the southern hemisphere, and the world became daylight in an instant. Its light was so intense that looking straight at it caused temporary blindness. The sun shone for about 20 seconds and then went out. Its radiated heat made that harsh winter night as sweltering as summer, and floods from suddenly melted snow submerged several cities. The event shocked the ants at the time. They asked the dinosaurs what had happened, but dinosaur scientists gave no explanation. Lacking curiosity, the ants soon forgot it.
At the time, the only definite result obtained by ant observations was this. The new sun appeared inside the solar system, about 1 astronomical unit from Earth. Kachika remained dismissive.
Doctor, what you are talking about still has nothing to do with reality. Even if that kind of energy truly exists, you cannot prove that dinosaurs have brought it to Earth. In fact, that possibility is almost non-existent.
I used to think so too, but please listen to the next part of the recording.
As Joy spoke, he started the recorder again. Datus, this game of ours is too dangerous, beyond the limit of what can be tolerated. Laurasia should immediately stop Bright Moon's negative countdown, or at least change it to positive countdown. If you do that, Gondwana will follow. Dodomi. Gondwana should first stop Poseidon's negative countdown. If you do that, Laurasia will follow. Datus. Laurasia was the first to start Bright Moon's negative countdown. Dodomi.
But, Your Majesty, earlier than that, on December 4th, 3 years ago, if Gondwana's spacecraft had not done that thing in space, Bright Moon and Poseidon would not exist at all. That devil would already have flown out of the solar system along a cometary orbit and would have nothing to do with Earth.
Dadas. That was necessary for scientific research. Dadami. Enough. You are still repeating that shameless lie. The Gondwana Empire pushed Earth civilization to the edge of a cliff. You criminals have no right to make any demand of Laurasia. Dadas.
It seems the Republic of Laurasia does not intend to make the first concession. Dadami, does the Gondwana Empire intend to? Dadas. Very well. It seems none of us cares whether Earth is destroyed. Dadami, if you do not care, neither do we. Dadas.
Good, good. Dinosaurs are a race that cares about nothing in the first place. Joy stopped the playback and asked Kachika and Ruo Li. I think both of you noticed the date mentioned in the conversation. December 4th, 3 years ago? Ruo Li recalled.
That was the day the new sun appeared. Yes. When all of this is connected, I do not know what you feel, but I feel a chill all through me. Kakika said,
We do not oppose your trying to clarify this matter. Joy sighed. Easier said than done. The best way to uncover this secret would be to search the dinosaur military network. But chopping in computers and dinosaur computers have completely different structures. Although we can enter the hardware parts of dinosaur computers at will, we still cannot invade them through software. Otherwise, why would we use the clumsy method of eavesdropping to gather intelligence? With that method, uncovering this secret in a short time is impossible.
Very well, Doctor. I will provide the forces you need for this investigation, but this matter must not affect our ongoing total war against the dinosaurs. Right now, the only thing that gives me chills is letting the dinosaur empire continue to exist. I think you have been living inside an illusion, and that is harmful to the great undertaking the Federation is now carrying out.
Joy said nothing more. He turned and left. The next day he disappeared. 6. The destruction of the dinosaur world.
2 soldier ants quietly crawled out through the gap under the main gate of the Gondwana Imperial Palace. They were the last 2 of 3,000 ants responsible for planting thunder grains in the palace computer systems and dinosaur heads. After emerging from the door gap, they began climbing down the tall steps. On the sheer cliff of the first step, they saw the figure of an ant climbing upward.
Hey, is that Dr. Joy? One soldier ant said in surprise to the other, the chief scientist of the Federation. Yes, it is him. Why would he come here? Why does he look so strange? One soldier ant said after watching Joy crawl into the door gap.
Something is wrong. Where is your radio? Report to the officer, quickly. Emperor Darius was presiding over a meeting attended by the Empire's principal ministers when a secretary came in to report. Dr. Joy, chief scientist of the Ant Federation, urgently requested an audience with the Emperor.
Let him wait. We will see him after the meeting.
Darius said with a wave of his claw. The secretary returned not long after leaving. He says the matter is extremely important, insists on seeing Your Majesty immediately, and requests that the Minister of State, the Minister of Science, and the Commander-in-Chief of the Imperial Army also be present.
Damn it. Why is this little insect so impolite? Tell him to wait, or else get out. But the secretary looked at the ministers in the room, then leaned close to the Emperor's ear and whispered.
He says he has defected from the Ant Federation.
The Minister of State interrupted. Joy is an important member of the Ant Federation leadership, and his way of thinking seems different from that of other ants. If he has come like this, he may truly have something urgent and important.
Very well. Let him come here.
Datus pointed to the broad tabletop of the conference table. I have come to save Earth. Joy stood on the smooth plane of the conference table and spoke to the mountain-like dinosaurs around him. A translator converted his scent language into dinosaur speech, and an unseen loudspeaker played it.
Such a grand claim. Earth seems perfectly fine right now.
Datus said with a cold laugh. You will not think so for long. First, I need all of you to answer one question. What are Bright Moon and Poseidon? The dinosaurs immediately became alert and exchanged glances. The mountains around Joy fell silent. Only after a long while did Datus ask in return.
Why should we tell you?
Your Majesty, if they are what I suspect, I will also reveal to you a super secret that concerns the life or death of the dinosaur world. you will consider the exchange worthwhile.
And if they are not what you suspect?
Dadas asked darkly. Then I will not tell you that super secret. You may kill me, or never let me leave this place, in order to preserve your secret. In any case, none of us loses anything.
Dadas was silent for several seconds, then nodded to the Imperial Science Minister seated on the left side of the conference table. Tell him. At the Ant Federation headquarters, Marshal Ruo Li put down the phone and said gravely to Executive Kachika,
Joy's whereabouts have been discovered. It seems our prediction was correct. That fellow has defected. How is the Thundergrain deployment going? Operation Wirecut is 92% complete. Operation Brain Cut is 90% complete as well.
Kachika turned toward the large screen displaying a world map. He looked at the continents flashing with many colors, stayed silent for several seconds, and then said,
Let the history of Earth turn to a new page. Detonate in 10 minutes!
After listening to the accounts from several dinosaur ministers, Joy was so shocked that he grew dizzy. For a moment, he could barely stand, much less speak.
Well, Doctor, can you now keep your promise and tell us your secret?
Dadas asked. Joye snapped awake as if from a dream. This is too terrible. You are simply devils. But the ants are devils too. Quick, call the Supreme Executive of the Ant Federation immediately. You have not answered.
Your Majesty, there is no time to reveal any secret. They already know I have come here and may act early, at any moment. The destruction of the dinosaur world is hanging by a thread, and the destruction of Earth will follow immediately after it. Believe me, make the call, quickly, quickly.
Very well.
The Dinosaur Emperor picked up the telephone on the conference table. Joy watched in burning anxiety as his thick fingers pressed the enormous keys on the phone one by one. Then, faintly, from the receiver in Datas's claw, Joy heard the connection tone. A few seconds later, the tone stopped, and he knew Kachika had picked up the rice grain-sized telephone at the other end. Soon, Kachika's voice came from the receiver.
Hello, who is this? Datas spoke into the receiver.
Is this Executive Kachika? I am Datas. Now...
At that instant, Joy heard a faint clicking sound all around him, like the second hands of many clocks moving at once. He knew it was the sound of the thunder grains exploding inside the dinosaurs' heads. All the dinosaurs froze at the same time. Reality in that moment seemed fixed like a still image. The receiver in Dadas's claw crashed heavily onto the tabletop not far from Joy, making a world-shaking sound. Then all the dinosaurs collapsed with a roar. The tabletop plane shook several times. After the dinosaur mountains vanished, the horizon seemed empty. Joy climbed onto the telephone earpiece. Kachika's voice was still coming from it.
Hello, this is Kachika. What is the matter? Hello? The earpiece membrane vibrated beneath that voice, making Joy's whole body go numb. He shouted,
Executive, it is Joy.
Unlike before, his scent language was not converted into sound, and so Kachika, at the other end of the line, could not hear him. The palace translation system had already been destroyed by thundergrains. Joy did not speak again. He knew that whatever he said, it was too late.
Then all the lights in the hall went out. It was already evening, and everything fell into dimness. Joy crawled toward the nearest window. The distant noise of city traffic disappeared, and all sank into dead silence, much like the frozen state just before the dinosaurs fell. When Joy crossed the edge of the conference table and began to climb down, discordant sounds from outside drifted in. First, the distant running and screaming of dinosaurs, which Joy knew came from outside the palace because no living dinosaurs could remain inside it. All had died from the thunder grains in their skulls. Then came alarms from the distant city, sounding intermittently for a short time before vanishing.
When Joy had crossed half the floor on his way to the window, faint explosions began to sound in the distance. He finally climbed onto the window and looked out. All of Boulder City lay before him. Evening covered the city in darkness. Several thin columns of smoke rose into the not yet black sky. Later, more smoke columns appeared. At the bases of some columns, firelight emerged, and the city's outline flickered in and out within the glow. The number of fires increased. Firelight came through the window and cast wavering dark red reflections on the high ceiling behind Joy.
7. Ultimate deterrence. We have succeeded, Marshal Ruoli shouted excitedly as he looked at the world map flashing red on the big screen.
The dinosaur world is completely paralyzed. Their information systems have been totally cut off. All cities have lost power. Vehicles damaged by thunder grains have blocked every road, and fires are appearing and spreading everywhere. Operation Brain Cut has eliminated more than 4 million important members of the dinosaur world leadership. The central organs of the Gondwana Empire and the Republic of Laurasia no longer exist. The two dinosaur powers have fallen into a brainless shock, and their entire societies are in chaos.
This is only the beginning,
Kakika said.
All dinosaur cities have lost their water supply, and their stored grain will soon be eaten up by these huge consumers. Only then will the truly fatal moment arrive. Large numbers of dinosaurs will abandon the cities, but with no transportation and with roads blocked, they cannot disperse in a short time. They eat too much. At least half of them will starve before finding enough food. In fact, the moment the dinosaurs abandon the cities, their technological society will have completely collapsed, and the dinosaur world will have fallen back into a low-technology agricultural age.
What about the nuclear weapon systems of the two great powers?
An ant asked. Ruoli answered,
Just as we expected, all dinosaur nuclear weapons, including intercontinental missiles and strategic bombers, have been reduced to scrap metal by our large numbers of thunder grains. No accidental nuclear incident or nuclear contamination has occurred.
Excellent. This is truly a great moment. We need only wait for the dinosaur world to perish by itself.
Kakika said, elated. At that moment, an ant reported that Dr. Joy had returned and urgently wanted to see Kachika and Ruoli. When the exhausted chief scientist entered the command center, Kachika angrily scolded him.
Doctor, at the most critical moment you betrayed the great cause of the Ant Federation. You will face a severe trial.
When you have heard everything I have learned, you will understand who should really be put on trial.
Joy said coldly.
What did you go to the Gondwana Emperor for?
Ruoli asked. I learned from him what Bright Moon and Poseidon really are. The doctor's words instantly cooled the ants' excitement. They fixed their attention on Joy. Joy looked around and asked,
First, does anyone here know what antimatter is?
The ants were silent for a moment. Kachika said,
I know a little. Antimatter is a kind of matter imagined by dinosaur physicists. The charges of the particles in its atoms are opposite to those of matter in our world. Once antimatter comes into contact with the positive matter of our world, the mass of both sides is entirely converted into energy.
Joy nodded his antennae and said,
Now everyone knows there is something more powerful than nuclear weapons. For the same mass, matter-antimatter annihilation produces thousands of times more energy than a nuclear bomb.
But what does that have to do with the mysterious Bright Moon and Poseidon?
Please listen as I continue. Do you remember the new sun that suddenly appeared at night in the southern hemisphere 3 years ago? That flash came from a small celestial body that entered the solar system along a cometary orbit. The body was less than 30 kilometers across, only a small rock drifting in space. But it was made of antimatter. As it passed through the asteroid belt, it collided with a meteorite. The meteorite and antimatter annihilated, releasing tremendous energy and producing that flash. At the time, both Laurasia and Gondwana launched probes, and both obtained the same result. The annihilation produced many antimatter fragments of various sizes, and those fragments scattered through space. Dinosaur astronomers soon located several fragments. This was not very difficult, because inside the asteroid belt, positive particles in the solar wind annihilated with the antimatter and caused the surfaces of those fragments to emit a special glow. At that time, the arms race between Laurasia and Gondwana was at its height. Thus, the two dinosaur powers simultaneously conceived an utterly insane idea: collect some antimatter fragments and bring them back to Earth as superweapons far more powerful than nuclear bombs to deter each other.
Wait. Kakika interrupted Joy. There is an obvious logical error here. Since antimatter annihilates when it contacts positive matter, what container did they use to store it and bring it back to Earth? Joy continued. Dinosaur astronomers discovered that a considerable part of that antimatter body was antimatter iron, and all the fragments they located in space were antimatter iron as well. Antimatter iron, like iron in our world, can be affected by magnetic fields. That made a storage solution possible. Dinosaurs could build a container whose interior was a vacuum and generate a powerful confining magnetic field inside it, holding the stored antimatter firmly at the center and preventing it from touching the inner wall. In this way, antimatter could be stored and transported or dropped anywhere.
Of course, at first, this idea was only a theoretical possibility. To use such a container to bring antimatter back to Earth was an extremely insane and dangerous act. But madness is the nature of dinosaurs, and the desire to dominate the world overcame everything. They really did it.
The Gondwana Empire took the first step on this road to hell. They designed and built a magnetic confinement container. It was a hollow sphere. While collecting an antimatter fragment, the sphere split into two hemispheres, each fixed to one of the spacecraft's mechanical arms. The spacecraft slowly approached the fragment. The mechanical arms held the two hemispheres and closed them around the fragment with extreme care. At last, the fragment was enclosed within the hollow sphere. At the same time the two hemispheres joined, the confinement field generated by superconductors inside the sphere began to operate, holding the fragment at the exact center. Then the spacecraft brought the sphere back to Earth.
The Gondwana spacecraft carried the spherical container into Earth's atmosphere. The fragment weighed 45 tons. If it annihilated inside the atmosphere, 90 tons of matter and antimatter would be converted into pure energy, and that immense energy would destroy all life on Earth. Naturally, the Laurasian dinosaurs did not want to perish together with the Gondwana Empire, so they could only watch helplessly as the spacecraft landed on the sea.
What happened next drove madness to its peak. After the Gondwana spacecraft landed, the spherical container was transferred at sea onto a large freighter. The ship was named Poseidon, and afterward, the dinosaurs also called the antimatter fragment it carried Poseidon. The ship did not sail back to Gondwana. It sailed toward the continent of Laurasia and finally docked at the largest port in Laurasia. During the entire voyage, Laurasia did not dare intercept this ship of destruction. They could only let it pass. The ship entered the harbor as if no one could stop it. After Poseidon docked, The dinosaurs aboard returned to Gondwana by helicopter and abandoned the ship in the port.
Laurasian dinosaurs treated the Poseidon with religious dread and dared make no move against it, because they knew the Gondwana Empire could remotely control the spherical container and shut off its confinement field at any time, causing the antimatter fragment to touch the container and annihilate. If that happened, the destruction of the whole world would be unavoidable. But the first to be destroyed would be Laurasia. Everything on the continent would instantly turn to ash in the flames of a death sun rising on the coast. Those were the darkest days of the Republic of Laurasia. The Gondwana Empire held the thread of Earth's life in its claws, became unimaginably arrogant, constantly made territorial demands of Laurasia, and ordered it to disarm its nuclear weapons. But that one-sided situation did not last long. Only 1 month after Gondwana's Poseidon operation, Laurasia carried out the same action. Using the same technology, it brought a second antimatter fragment back from space and did the same thing the Gondwana Empire had done, loaded it onto a freighter named Bright Moon and transported it to the largest port on the Gondwana continent.
Thus, the dinosaur world again formed an equilibrium. It was balance under ultimate deterrence. Earth had been pushed to the edge of destruction.
To avoid worldwide panic, both the Poseidon operation and the Bright Moon operation were carried out in absolute secrecy. Even in the dinosaur world, only a very few knew the details. Both operations used extremely high reliability equipment regardless of cost, with replaceable modular structures. At the same time, the systems were not large, so they needed no ant maintenance at all. That is why the Ant Federation has known nothing about them until now.
Joy's account shocked every ant in the headquarters. From the summit of victory, they plunged into an abyss of fear. Kachika said,
"This is not merely madness, it is perversion. Ultimate deterrence based on the mutual destruction of the entire world has completely lost any political or military meaning. It is pure perversion."
Doctor, this is the result of the dinosaur curiosity, imagination, and creativity that you admire.
Marshal Ruoli said sarcastically.
Do not wander off. Let us return to the extreme danger now facing the world.
Joy said,
I need to discuss the negative countdown mentioned by the heads of the 2 dinosaur powers. To avoid having no means of retaliation after a preemptive strike by the other side, the 2 dinosaur powers almost simultaneously adopted a new standby mode for Poseidon and Bright Moon. This is the so-called negative countdown. From then on, the home remote station was no longer used to send a detonation signal to the antimatter container. Instead, it sent a signal to cancel detonation. The spherical container, meanwhile, was always in a detonation countdown. Only after receiving the cancellation signal from its home remote station would it interrupt the current countdown, reset from 0, begin a new countdown, and wait for the next cancellation signal.
Each cancellation signal is personally sent by the Emperor of Gondwana and the President of Laurasia. In this way, if one side suffers a preemptive strike by the other and falls into paralysis, the cancellation signal cannot be sent, and the spherical container will finish its countdown and detonate the antimatter. This standby mode makes a preemptive strike equivalent to suicide, makes the enemy's existence a necessary condition for one's own existence, and raises the danger facing Earth by another level. Negative countdown is the maddest part of this ultimate deterrence, or, in the executive's words, the most perverse part.
The headquarters again fell into dead silence. Kachika was the first to break it. His sent voice trembled slightly. So Poseidon and Bright Moon are both now waiting for their next cancellation signal.
Joy nodded his antennae. Perhaps for 2 signals that will never be sent.
You mean Gondwana's and Laurasia's remote stations have already been destroyed by our thunder grains?
Ruoli asked. Yes. Dardus told me the location of the Gondwana remote station, and also the location they had reconnoitered for the Laurasian station. After I returned, I searched the Operation Wirecut database and found that both are very small signal transmission stations. Because their purpose was unknown, we placed only a few thunder grains in their communication equipment, 35 in the Gondwana station and 26 in the Laurasian station, cutting a total of 61 wires. The number is not large, but it is enough to make the transmitting equipment of both remote stations completely fail.
How long is each countdown? 3 days, 66 hours. The Laurasian and Gondwana countdowns began almost at the same time. Usually the cancellation signal is sent 22 hours after the countdown starts. This countdown has already been running for 20 hours. We have 2 days left.
Ruoli said,
If we knew the exact content of the cancellation signal, we could build a transmitter ourselves and keep interrupting the countdowns of Poseidon and Bright Moon.
The problem is that we do not know it and cannot know it. The dinosaurs did not tell me the signal content. They only said it is an extremely complex long password that changes every time, and its algorithm is stored only in the computers of the remote stations. I believe no dinosaur knows it now.
So only those 2 remote stations can send the cancellation signals. I think so. Kakika thought quickly and said, then what we can do is repair them as soon as possible. 8. The battle for the remote station.
The Gondwana Empire's remote station for sending the cancellation signal was located in a desert far outside Boulder City. It was a small building topped with complex antennas, and it looked as unremarkable as a weather station. Its guard was loose, only 1 platoon of dinosaurs. These guards were mainly there to prevent any dinosaur from their own country who happened to pass by from wandering in by accident. They were not worried about enemy spies or saboteurs. Compared with Gondwana, Laurasia had even more reason to ensure the safety of this place.
Apart from the guards, only 5 dinosaurs handled the daily work of the remote station. 1 engineer, 3 operators, and 1 maintenance technician. Like the guards, they knew nothing about the station's purpose.
In the station control room, there was a large screen displaying a countdown beginning at 66 hours. But this countdown had never decreased below 44 hours. Whenever it reached that point, usually in the morning, the image of Emperor Dardus would appear on another empty screen. Each time the Emperor said only 1 short sentence.
I command you to send the signal. At that moment, the operator on duty would stand at attention and reply, Yes, Your Majesty. Then he would move the mouse on the console and click the transmit
icon on the computer screen. The large screen would display the following message: cancellation signal sent. Successful reply received for this cancellation. Countdown reset. Then the screen would again display 66 and begin counting down.
On the other screen, the Emperor would watch all this with intense concentration. Only when the reset countdown began would he leave, as if relieved. From the look in the Emperor's eyes as he watched the signal sent, it was clear that the signal was extremely important. But these ordinary dinosaur operators could never have imagined that every day this signal postponed Earth's death sentence once.
On this day, the calm life that had continued unchanged for 2 years was interrupted. The signal transmitter failed. The remote station was equipped with high reliability equipment and redundant backups. A complete shutdown of the whole system, including backups,
could not have been caused by natural or accidental factors. The engineer and technician immediately searched for the fault and soon found several broken wires. Only ants could reconnect those wires. So they immediately called their superiors, requesting that ant repair workers be sent, only to discover that the telephone was dead.
They kept searching for the fault and found more broken wires. By then, the time when the Emperor would order the signal sent was drawing near. The dinosaurs had no choice but to try reconnecting the wires themselves. But those thin wires were hard for their thick claws to join. The 5 dinosaurs were frantic. Although the phone was dead, they believed communications would soon recover. When the countdown reached 44 hours, the Emperor would surely appear on that screen. For 2 years, in the dinosaurs' minds, the Emperor's appearance had become as fixed a law as the rising sun. But today, though the sun rose, the Emperor did not appear. For the first time, the countdown digits dropped below 44 and continued decreasing at the same constant speed.
Later, the dinosaurs learned that they could no longer count on ants because the transmitter had been destroyed by ants. Dinosaurs fleeing Boulder City began passing this place. From those terrified refugees, the remote station dinosaurs learned what had happened in the capital. The ants had used thundergrains to destroy all the machines of the dinosaur empire, and the dinosaur world had fallen into paralysis.
But the dinosaurs working at the remote station were all dutiful. They continued trying to connect the broken wires. It was an impossible task. In most places where wires had been cut inside the machines, the dinosaurs' thick claws simply could not reach. The few exposed wire ends jumped around between their clumsy fingers and would not come together.
Ah, those damned ants! The dinosaur technician rubbed his aching eyes and cursed. At that moment, the engineer widened his eyes. He really saw ants. It was a small team of about 100 ants, moving rapidly across the white surface of the console. The ant in the lead shouted up to the dinosaur,
"Hey, we have come to help you repair the machine. We have come to reconnect the wires. We have come to—"
The dinosaurs had not switched on the scent language translator, so they could not hear the ants' words. In fact, even if they had heard, they would not have believed them. Hatred of ants filled their entire minds. The dinosaurs slapped and pinched at the ants' position on the control console with their claws, muttering through clenched teeth.
Let's see you plant thundergrains. Let's see you destroy machines. Soon a small smear appeared on the white tabletop. All the ants had been crushed. Report, Executive. The dinosaurs inside the remote station attacked the ant repair team and wiped them out on the control console.
50 meters from the remote station, beneath a blade of grass, one ant who had escaped by chance from inside the station reported to Kachika. Most members of the Ant Federation headquarters were gathered there.
Executive, we must find a way to communicate with the dinosaurs in the remote station and explain why we are here.
Joy said, "How can we communicate? They will not listen to us at all. They will not even turn on the translator. Could we try calling?" An ant suggested.
We tried long ago. The entire dinosaur communication system has been destroyed, and it is completely disconnected from the Ant Federation telephone network. Calls cannot get through. Ruoli said,
Everyone should know of an ancient ant skill. For the long centuries before the Steam Age, our ancestors arranged themselves in lines to form characters and communicate with dinosaurs.
How many troops have gathered here at present? 10 army divisions, about 150,000 ants. How many words can that form? That depends on the size of the letters. To let dinosaurs see them from a certain distance, at most a dozen or so words. Very well.
Kakika thought for a moment. Arranged the following sentence. We have come to help you repair the machine. This machine can save the world. The ants are coming again. So many this time.
At the gate of the remote station, dinosaur soldiers saw an ant formation approaching. The formation was about 3 or 4 meters square. As it rose and fell over the uneven ground, it looked like a black flag drifting across the earth. Are they going to attack us?
Doesn't look like it. This formation is strange. As the ant formation drew nearer, a sharp-eyed dinosaur cried out, "Wow, there are words in it." Another dinosaur read slowly, word by word. "We have come to help you repair the machine. This machine can save the world."
I have heard that in ancient times ants talked with our ancestors this way. Now I have seen it with my own eyes.
One dinosaur exclaimed.
Bullshit!
The lieutenant waved his antennae and said,
Do not fall for their tricks. Go, pour all the hot water from the heater into basins and bring it here.
The dinosaur soldiers began arguing all at once. What they say is too strange. How can this machine save the world? Whose world? Ours or theirs? The signal this machine sends must be very important. Yes. Otherwise, why would the Emperor personally order it sent every day?
Idiots! The lieutenant scolded them.
You still believe ants after all this? Because we trusted them. They have already destroyed the Empire. These are the most vile and treacherous insects on Earth. We will never be fooled by them again. Hurry, go get the hot water.
Soon the dinosaur soldiers carried out 5 large basins of hot water. 5 soldiers, each holding one basin, lined up and walked toward the ant formation, then poured the hot water over it. Scalding water splashed amid spreading steam. The line of black words on the ground scattered, and more than half the ants in the character formation were boiled to death.
Communication with the dinosaurs is now impossible. The only choice is to storm the remote station, occupy it, repair the machine, and send the cancellation signal ourselves.
Kakika said, looking at the steam rising in the distance. Ants? Storming a dinosaur building? Ruoli looked at Kachika as if he did not recognize him. From a military standpoint, that is madness.
There is no other way. This was already a mad world. The building is not large, and it is isolated. It cannot receive reinforcements in a short time. If we concentrate the maximum force we can assemble, it is possible to take it.
What are those things in the distance? They look like ant superwalkers.
Hearing the sentries shout, the lieutenant raised his binoculars. On the distant wasteland, he indeed saw a long row of black things moving. Looking more carefully, he saw they were exactly what the sentry had said. Ant vehicles were usually very small, but for special military needs, they had built some vehicles that were enormous relative to their bodies. Superwalkers. Each was about the size of one of our tricycles, which in the eyes of ants was undoubtedly a colossal object, like a 10,000-ton ship to us. Superwalkers had no wheels. They imitated ants and moved on 6 mechanical legs so they could cross complex terrain quickly. Each superwalker could carry hundreds of thousands of ants.
Open fire. Shoot those vehicles.
The lieutenant ordered. The dinosaur soldiers used their only light machine gun to fire at the distant walkers. A line of bullets kicked up columns of dust in the sand. The front leg of the lead vehicle was shot off, and it overturned at once, while the remaining 5 mechanical legs kept waving. Many black spears rolled from the open side of its cabin, each as large as one of our footballs. They were balls of ants. After rolling to the ground, these black balls quickly dispersed, like blocks of coffee dissolving in water. 2 more walkers were hit and stopped, but bullets piercing the cabins could not kill many ants. Black ant balls rolled from the cabins to the ground, one after another.
Ah, if only we had a cannon.
One dinosaur soldier said grenades would do too. A flamethrower would work best.
Enough. Stop talking nonsense. Count how many walkers there are.
The lieutenant lowered the binoculars and pointed ahead. Heavens. There must be 200 or 300. I think every superwalker the Ant Federation has on Gondwana has come here.
That means more than 100 million ants are gathered here,
the lieutenant said.
We can be certain the ants are going to storm the remote station.
Lieutenant, let us charge over and smash those insect vehicles. No, our machine guns and rifles will not inflict much damage on them. We still have gasoline for the generator. We can charge over and burn them. The lieutenant calmly shook his head.
That would only burn part of them. Our first task is to defend the remote station. Now listen to my arrangements.
Executive, Marshal. The Forward Air Observer reports that the dinosaurs are digging trenches. 2 rings of trenches centered on the remote station. They are diverting water from a nearby river to fill the outer trench. And they have brought out several large oil drums and are pouring gasoline into the inner trench.
Launch the attack immediately. The ant swarm began moving toward the remote station, a black mass like the shadow of clouds cast across the earth. The sight terrified the dinosaurs inside the station.
The front of the swarm reached the first trench, already filled with water. The ants at the very front did not stop. They crawled straight into the water. The ants behind stepped on their bodies and crawled a little farther in. Soon, a thick black floating membrane formed on the water and rapidly expanded toward the inner side of the trench. The dinosaur soldiers wore sealed helmets to prevent ants from entering their bodies. From the inner side of the water trench, they shoveled soil onto the swarm and poured basin after basin of hot water, but these measures did little. The black membrane quickly covered the entire water surface, and the swarm surged across on it like a black flood. The dinosaurs had no choice but to retreat inside the second trench and ignite the gasoline there.
A ring of blazing fire surrounded the remote station.
When the swarm reached the fire trench, the ants began stacking themselves along its edge, forming an ant dam. The dam rose continuously until it was more than 2 meters high, a black wall outside the fire trench. Then the whole ant dam began moving toward the flames. Its surface writhed in the firelight like a black python. Under the heat, blue smoke rose from its surface, and the air filled with a sharp, burned smell. Scorched ants kept rolling off the surface and falling into the fire trench, where they burned, forming a strange ring of green fire along the outer edge. A new layer of ants continually replaced the burned surface, and the whole ant dam still stood firmly by the trench.
Then large numbers of ants climbed up the other side of the dam to its top and gathered into great black ant balls, about the same size as those that had rolled from the superwalkers an hour earlier. Each ball contained an entire division of ant troops. These black spheres rolled down from the top of the ant dam. Some were swallowed by the fire, but most used their momentum to cross the fire trench and reach the far side. During their passage through the flames, the outer layers of these ant balls were burned black, but countless ants still gripped one another tightly. A scorched shell formed around each ball, protecting the ants inside.
Soon more than 1,000 ant balls had rolled onto the far bank of the fire trench. Their outer charged shells cracked open, and the spheres dissolved into swarms that surged darkly up the steps of the remote station.
The spirits of the dinosaur soldiers guarding the station completely collapsed. Ignoring the lieutenant's attempts to stop them, they burst out the door,
ran around the back of the building, and fled along one channel not yet filled by the ant swarm that was surrounding the station.
The swarm poured into the station's ground floor, then surged up the stairs and into the control room. At the same time, ants climbed the outer walls and entered through the windows. For a time, the lower half of the building turned black.
6 dinosaurs remained in the control room: the lieutenant, the engineer, the maintenance technician, and 3 operators. In terror, they watched ants enter through the door, the windows, and every crack, as if the entire building had been immersed in a sea of ants and black water was seeping in from everywhere. They looked outside and discovered that this sea of ants truly existed. As far as they could see, the ground was covered by the black swarm, and the remote station was only an island in that ant ocean.
The swarm soon covered most of the control room floor, leaving an empty circle before the console. And the 6 dinosaurs stood inside that circle. The engineer hurriedly took out a translator. As soon as he switched it on, he heard a voice.
I am the Supreme Executive of the Ant Federation. There is no time to explain everything in detail. You only need to know that if the remote station cannot send a signal within 10 minutes, Earth will be destroyed.
The engineer looked around. There were ants everywhere, dark and dense. Following the direction indicator on the translator, he saw 3 ants on the control console. The words had come from one of them. He shook his head at the 3 ants. The transmitter is broken.
Our technicians have reconnected every broken wire and repaired the machine. Please, start the machine and send the signal immediately. The engineer shook his head again. There is no power. Do you not have a backup generator?
Yes. Since external power was cut off, we have been using a gasoline generator, but now there is no fuel. All the gasoline was poured into the trench outside and burned. Will the world really be destroyed in 10 minutes? Kakika's answer came through the translator.
If the signal cannot be sent, yes. Kakika looked out the window and saw that the fire outside had gone out, confirming what the lieutenant had said. There was no remaining fuel in the trench either. He turned and asked Ruo Li, "How much time remains in the countdown?"
Ruo Li had been watching his clock. He answered.
5 minutes and 30 seconds remain, Executive.
Joy said,
"We have just received a call. The Laurasian side has failed. The dinosaurs guarding the remote station blew it up during the ant army's assault. The cancellation signal for Bright Moon can no longer be sent. It will detonate in 5 minutes."
Ruo Li said calmly.
Poseidon is the same, Executive. It is all over.
The dinosaurs did not understand what the 3 highest leaders of the Ant Federation were saying. The engineer said,
"We can go look for gasoline nearby. There's a village 5 kilometers from here. If we hurry, we can be back in 20 minutes.
Kakika weakly waved his antennae. "Go. All of you go. Go wherever you want." The 6 dinosaurs filed out. At the door, the engineer stopped and asked the same question the lieutenant had asked earlier. Will Earth really be destroyed in a few minutes?
The Supreme Executive of the Ant Federation made an expression that resembled a smile. "Engineer, everything has a day when it is destroyed."
This is the first time I have heard an ant say something so philosophical.
The engineer said, then turned and left. Kachika again walked to the edge of the control console and addressed the black mass of ant troops on the floor.
"Quickly pass my words to the whole army. Troops near the remote station must immediately take shelter in the basement of this building. Troops farther away should find cracks and holes nearby and hide in them. The Ant Federation government's final words to all citizens are these: the end of the world has come. Each of you take care of yourselves."
Executive Marshal, let us go to the basement together.
Joy said, "No. You go quickly, Doctor. We have committed the greatest mistake in the history of civilization. We no longer have the right to live.
Yes, Doctor,
Ruo Li said.
Though it is unlikely, we still hope you can preserve a spark of civilization.
Joye touched antennae separately with Kashika and Ruo Li, the highest etiquette of the ant world. Then he turned and blended into the rapidly departing swarm in the control room.
After the ant army left, the control room was quiet. Kachika crawled toward the window, and Ruo Li followed. When the two ants reached the window, they saw a strange sight. It was the hour before dawn, with night almost gone, and a crescent moon hung in the sky. Suddenly, the crescent's direction rotated by an angle in an instant, and its brightness increased sharply until the silver light became as dazzling as an electric arc, illuminating everything on the ground, including the evacuating ants in minute detail.
What is happening? Has the sun grown brighter?
Ruo Li asked curiously. No, Marshal. Another new sun has appeared. The moon is reflecting its light. That sun has appeared over Laurasia and is burning that continent to a cinder. Gondwana's sun should appear too. There it is. It has come.
A stronger light shot in from the west and soon drowned everything. Before they were vaporized by the heat, the two ants saw a snow-white sun rise swiftly from the western horizon. Its volume expanded rapidly until it occupied half the sky. Everything on the earth burned in an instant. The antimatter annihilation on the coast was more than 1,000 kilometers away, and the shock wave would take tens of minutes to arrive. But before that, everything had already ended in fire.
This was the last day of the Cretaceous. 9. The long night the winter had lasted 3,000 years.
At noon, on a slightly warmer day, in the middle of the Gondwana continent, two ants crawled from a deep nest to the surface. In the lifeless gray sky, the sun was only a blurred halo. Thick ice and snow covered the land. Occasionally, a rock protruded from the snow, dark and conspicuous. As far as the eye could see, the distant mountains were white as well.
Ant A turned and examined a huge skeleton. Giant skeletons like this were everywhere on the land. Because they were white too, they blended with the snow and were not easy to see from a distance. But from this angle, against the background of the sky, the skeleton appeared especially striking.
I heard this kind of animal was called a dinosaur.
Ant A said Ant B turned too and gazed at the skeleton against the sky. Did you hear them tell that legend about the magical age last night? I did. They said that thousands of years ago, ants had a glorious age.
Yes, they said that at that time ants did not live in underground caves, but in great cities on the surface. They also were not born from queens. It really was a magical age.
The legend says that the magical age was created by ants and dinosaurs together. Dinosaurs had no dexterous hands, so ants did the fine work for them. Ants had no flexible minds, so dinosaurs thought up magical technologies.
That magical age. Ants and dinosaurs made many great machines, built many great cities, and possessed powers like gods. Did you understand the part of the legend about how that world was destroyed?
Not really. It seems very complicated. War broke out in the dinosaur world, and war broke out between ants and dinosaurs. Later, two suns appeared on Earth. Ant A shivered in the cold wind. Ah, how wonderful it would be if there were a new sun now.
You do not understand. Those two suns were terrifying. They burned everything on land. Then why is it so cold now?
It is complicated. It seems to have been like this. For a period after the two new suns appeared, the world really was hot. They say the land near the suns melted into magma. But later, dust raised by the explosions of the new suns blocked the old sun's light in the sky. The world became cold, even colder than before the two suns appeared. That is how it is now. Dinosaurs were so large that naturally they all died in that terrible age, but some ants burrowed underground and survived.
I heard that not long ago ants could still read. Now none of us knows written words, and no one can read the books left by the ancients. We are degenerating. If this continues, ants will soon degenerate into little insects that know nothing except how to dig nests and search for food.
What is wrong with that? In this hard age, knowing less makes life easier. That is true. Will there come a day when the world becomes warm again and some other animal builds another magical age? It is possible. I think that animal should have both a large enough brain and dexterous hands.
Yes, but it cannot be as large as dinosaurs. They ate too much and life would be hard. And it cannot be as small as we are. Its brain would not be large enough. Sigh, how could such a magical animal ever appear?
I think it will. Time is infinite and endless. Anything can appear. I tell you, anything can appear.